Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Good evening and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Market Mantra, the program in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. My name is Rajesh Lake and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार से जुड़ी ताजा खबरें आप तक लाएंगे और उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। कार्यक्रम के दौरान चर्चा के लिए हमारे साथ विशेषज्ञ जुड़ेंगे। सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं राजेश।
The stock markets erasing all its gains. Sensex slips 67 points. Nifty falls 27 points and out before the close. Rupee weakens 9 paise against the dollar. GST has been a milestone in the economic landscape of India, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And gross loan portfolio of microfinance institutions surges 11.9% at the end of March 2021.
बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स आज सारी बढ़त गंवाकर 67 अंक फिसला। निफ्टी में 27 अंक की गिरावट। रुपया डॉलर के मुकाबले हुआ 9 पैसे कमजोर। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने कहा, वस्तु और सेवा कर जीएसटी देश के आर्थिक परिदृश्य में एक मील का पत्थर रहा है और मार्च 2021 के अंत में माइक्रो वित्तीय संस्थाओं के सकल ऋणों में 11.9% की बढ़ोतरी। सबसे पहले शुरुआत करते हैं सेंसेक्स से। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स आज शुरुआती बढ़त गंवाकर 0.1% के नुकसान से 67 अंक लुढ़ककर 52,483 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी 0.2% के नुकसान से 27 अंक गिरकर 15,722 पर आ गया। व्यापक बाजार में बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स मामूली नुकसान के साथ बंद हुआ, लेकिन स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 0.6% की बढ़त दर्ज हुई।
At the stock markets, losing all its gains, the Sensex at the Bombay Stock Exchange slipped 67 points or 0.1% in the last hour of the trade to end at 52,483 today. The Nifty at the National Stock Exchange fell 27 points or 0.2% to trade at 15,722. In the broader market, the BSE Mid-Cap Index ended marginally lower, but the Small Cap Index advanced 0.6% each. Among the sectoral indices on the BSE, the Utilities Index dropped 1.2%. The Power Index slipped 0.9%. The Finance Index and the BankX declined 0.6% each. And the Realty and the FMCG Index fell 0.4% each. Among advancing indices, the IT Index rose 0.9%, the Energy Index added 0.7%, the Tech Index gained 0.6%, and the Industrial Index moved up 0.5%.
बात रुपए के प्रदर्शन की करें तो अंतरबैंक विदेशी मुद्रा विनिमय बाजार में रुपया आज 9 पैसे कमजोर होकर $1 के मुकाबले 74 रुपए 32 पैसे पर बंद हुआ। और अब हमारे साथ शेयर बाजार
not at the moment, so we move on.
एशियाई बाजारों की तरफ रुख कर लेते हैं। एशियाई शेयर बाजारों में आज मिला जुला कारोबार देखा गया। जापान का निकेई मामूली गिरावट के साथ बंद हुआ। हांगकांग का हैंग सेंग सूचकांक 0.5% के नुकसान में रहा, लेकिन चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 0.5% लाभ में रहा। दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 0.3% और सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स 1.3% बढ़त के साथ बंद हुए। जापान में मई में कारखाना उत्पादन में 5.9% की गिरावट दर्ज की गई है। चीन में भी जून माह में कारखाना गतिविधियों में वृद्धि की गति थोड़ी सी सुस्त रही। कच्चे माल की लागत बढ़ने और निर्यात में व्यवधान से कारोबारी गतिविधियों पर असर पड़ा है। चीन के राष्ट्रीय सांख्यिकी ब्यूरो के आंकड़ों के अनुसार आधिकारिक पीएमआई इंडेक्स मई के 51 के मुकाबले जून में 50.9 दर्ज हुआ। रुख करते हैं यूरोपीय बाजारों का, तो यूरोपीय बाजारों में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार के दौरान लंदन का FTSE 100 0.8% फिसल गया, जबकि फ्रांस के CAC 40 में 1.2% की गिरावट रही और जर्मनी का डेक्स 1.3% के नुकसान में रहा।
Joining us now is Avinash Gorakshakar, market analyst. We welcome you, Avinash. I think we lost touch with him. After the Asian markets, let's move on to the US markets. On the Wall Street, the S&P 500 hit a record high for the fourth straight session yesterday, helped by shares of heavyweight technology firms and Morgan Stanley, while an upbeat consumer confidence report set a positive tone for key jobs data at the end of the week. U.S. consumer confidence increased in June to its highest level since the COVID-19 pandemic started more than a year ago, bolstering expectations for strong economic growth in the second quarter. Morgan Stanley jumped 3.7% after it doubled its dividend to 70 cents per share in the third quarter. JP Morgan Chase and Company, Bank of America, and Goldman Sachs Group also raised their payouts. While the S&P 500 climbing nearly 14% in the first half of the year, the focus will shift to the second quarter earnings season beginning in July, which could decide the path for the next leg of the equity markets.
और अब बाजार विश्लेषक अविनाश गोरक्षकर हमारे साथ ऑनलाइन जुड़ गए हैं। अविनाश जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत।
हाँ, गुड इवनिंग
जी। लगातार तीसरे कारोबारी सत्र में आज गिरावट देखी गई है। बाजार मजबूती के साथ खुले जरूर, लेकिन बढ़त बनाए रखने में नाकामयाब रहे और देखा जाए तो सेंसेक्स आज दिन का जो उच्चतम स्तर था करीब उससे 400 अंक नीचे आकर बंद हुआ है। किस तरीके से देखते हैं आप बाजार के इस व्यवहार को?
नहीं, मुझे लग रहा है कि मार्केट्स में बिकवाली का एकमात्र कारण ये है कि अभी जो जनवरी टू मार्च का जो तिमाही सीजन है वो अभी खत्म हो चुका है। अभी मार्केट अप्रैल टू जून के क्वार्टर के नंबर का इंतजार करेगी और अनुमान है कि कोविड का जो दूसरा वेव हुआ है इससे कहीं सेक्टर्स में थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम हो चुका है और हमारी जो ग्राउंड रिपोर्ट्स कंपनी से हमको मिल रही है, ये अनुमान लग रहा है कि शायद अप्रैल टू जून क्वार्टर कंपनी के लिए थोड़ा सा नरम रहेगा। उसके बाद कमोडिटी प्राइसेस में जो बढ़ोतरी हुई है उसका एक इम्पैक्ट इन्फ्लेशन के भी आने वाला है, तो ये भी थोड़े से ऐसे चिंताएं हैं जो मार्केट अभी थोड़ा सा डिस्काउंट कर रही है। और सबसे बड़ी बात, बहुत कम समय में मार्केट भाग चुका है, तो थोड़ा बहुत मुनाफा वसूली और मार्केट में कंसोलिडेशन हो रहा है। तो इस कारण से मार्केट में आपको एक रेजिस्टेंस दिख रहा है। 2-3 दिनों से मार्केट 16,000 के ऊपर जाने की कोशिश कर रहा है, लेकिन नाकामयाब रहा है और ये मुझे लग रहा है आने वाले दिनों में रहेगा जब तक पूरी तरह से क्लैरिटी नहीं आती कि नतीजों कैसे आएंगे और इन्फ्लेशन का ट्रेजेक्ट्री आगे कैसे जाएगी।
Avinash, you very rightly mentioned, and my colleague also, Vishal, mentioned about this bumpy ride on the Dalal Street, which continued for the third day today. The bank and the financial stocks weighed quite heavy on the indices today. Was profit booking the only reason behind it?
I think first the reason is profit booking, and secondly, markets are expecting that now the risk reward or maybe the alpha for basically making returns now from these levels is going to be a little difficult, considering the fact that the first quarter is going to be another weak quarter and markets could possibly see a little bit of struggle in the second quarter also before corporate activity and corporate earnings pick up. So I think all said and done, we could see earnings getting shifted back into the second half of FY22. So I think it's a mixture of profit booking and a kind of concern in the market that now with earnings growth coming down likely in the first quarter, it's most of the investors and traders are taking profits off the table and waiting for the markets to correct down so that they could possibly re-enter the market at lower level and there the risk reward could be much better. So, that is probably one of the reasons the markets are unlikely to go up in a hurry.
Okay. Today, Avinash, the broader market saw plenty of action across specific themes. And I was looking at the figures and I saw that the paper stocks really stood out, witnessing smart accumulation. What could be the reason behind it?
So I think paper stocks traditionally do well when the broad, economy does well, when the GDP growth does well, because paper stocks are a clear indication of how the economy does well. And secondly, paper prices have been going up because supply side constraints have been felt throughout, most of the value added as well as the commodity segments. And that is one reason why most of the paper companies have shown a very decent rise in their EBITDA margins, despite volumes not going up significantly. So I think most clearly, companies which have got large capacity, something like typically Tamil Nadu newsprint, typically, NK industries. I mean, typically, wherever the companies are operating in specialty kind of segments, they are definitely, being looked upon as more potentially better bets. I think some of the companies which showed very good numbers have been West Coast Paper, which showed very solid numbers. And I think markets are looking at such companies where value addition and premium quality, product segments are present with the company so that, they could possibly add a little bit sheen on their margins. So overall, I think paper sector should do well because if the economy does well, GDP growth numbers get better, then you're going to see overall paper consumption going up.
अविनाश जी, यहाँ ये आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि क्या आपको लगता है कि जो मार्केट में करंट वैल्यूएशंस की अगर हम बात करें तो वो एक वास्तविकता से थोड़ा ज्यादा है?
नहीं, मार्केट में देखिए, मार्केट फ्यूचर को देखता है और अगर हम FY22 की बात करें तो FY22 के अर्निंग्स मार्केट ने काफी हद तक पचा ली है. अभी मार्केट्स FY23 को देख रहे हैं, तो अगर किसी का शॉर्ट टू मीडियम टर्म नजरिया है तो मैं समझता हूँ कि मार्केट्स में अभी कोई बड़ा अपसाइड आने की जो पॉसिबिलिटी और कैपेसिटी है वो थोड़ी सी सीमित है. मार्केट्स सितंबर के बाद के तिमाही के जो नंबर्स आएंगे उसके ऊपर बहुत क्लोजली वॉच करेंगे क्योंकि मार्केट्स फॉरवर्ड लुकिंग है और उसके बाद 23 के नंबर्स में अगर तेजी दिख सकती है, पॉसिबली कोविड भी कम होता है, सितंबर अक्टूबर तक कोई थर्ड वेव आता नहीं है, तो मेरे ख्याल से मार्केट्स को बढ़ने की पॉसिबिलिटी रहेगी क्योंकि अर्निंग्स ग्रोथ को बढ़ने के लिए थोड़ा अभी समय लगेगा और कोविड का सेकंड वेव से हमको लगता है कि कहीं न कहीं मार्केट्स में थोड़ा सा ब्रेक लगने की पॉसिबिलिटी.
So to add to what Vishal just mentioned about the valuations being high and you being saying that they're not very high but at least 10 to 15% higher than the long-term averages. So would these positives already not be built into the prices? If so, aren't earning delivery crucial for the markets to sustain these valuations and move higher than these levels, Avinash?
I think markets are definitely, looking at a faster earnings momentum from the second half of FY22 because definitely the first quarter is going to be a dry quarter. The second quarter would be like a consolidation quarter. And hopefully if the earnings, if the COVID, cases are very insignificant in the second half, then one could expect a very strong revival and recovery in the second half. If possibly, we do get a third wave, then that could obviously impact the earnings too.
So where do you find the merit in a market like this then? Should one be looking at deep cyclicals, the high beta plays or some of the defensive stocks or export-oriented themes? Where would you go?
I think I would prefer my bet on the defensives and the low beta stocks because that is where possibly earnings have not been fully discounted by the markets. And I think where the margin of safety and the risk reward is still in favor of investors. So I think rather than going for high beta names or basically, companies which trade at very expensive valuations, it's always better to bet on well-established blue chip companies which trade at fair to moderate valuations and where the risk reward is better. I think a classic example is most of the IT companies. Secondly, companies like ITC, which still trade at decent valuation despite the fact that the markets have gone up, and there's a lot of value left in this. In ITC, considering that it's a very strong player having virtually no debt on the books, a lot of cash, plus which is very good dividend. So I think one has to be a little defensive now rather than put their bets on the high alpha or high beta names, which could possibly correct significantly in case the market corrects. And that is exactly what we are seeing for the last 4 days. The markets are unlikely to go beyond 16,000 and sustain at those levels there.
Okay. You just mentioned that indicators are towards the economic strength. So if that were the view, and one set of people believe it's better to move incrementally towards the cyclical names, but you don't seem to be in favor of that. You are more into defensive stocks.
In terms of cyclical, I think, the only cyclical sector which possibly is in a nice sweet spot is possibly the automobile sector and sectors, which are inclined towards the rural and the, monsoon related kind of sectors. Because we believe that, there's a lot of rural appetite and rural demand which is going to pick up in the second half. So clearly, if one were to look at cyclical sectors, I would avoid metals, but I would definitely look at automobiles, because automobiles is one sector which I think has got a lot of risk reward left, if provided the investor has a medium to long term.
अविनाश जी, तो आने वाले सत्रों में आप निवेशकों के लिए क्या सलाह देंगे?
मैं यही कहूंगा कि मार्केट को इंडेक्स के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से मत देखिए, सिलेक्टिव कंपनीज देखिए, क्योंकि हम 50 शेयर के इंडेक्स पे या 30 शेयर के इंडेक्स पे मार्केट्स का व्यू पूरी तरह से समझ नहीं सकते. तो काफी ऐसी कंपनीज है, जैसे कि मैंने अभी आईटीसी कहा है, महिंद्रा लार्ज कैप में है, तो ये ऐसी कंपनीज है जहां पे निवेशकों को एसआईपी करके थोड़ा थोड़ा करके निवेश करना चाहिए. हमको लग रहा है कि अगर इन्वेस्टर्स का लॉन्ग टर्म नजरिया है तो इन शेयरों से अच्छा खासा पैसा बन सकता है, प्रोवाइडेड इन्वेस्टर थोड़ा सा एक लॉन्ग टर्म काइंड ऑफ ऑब्जेक्टिव से काम.
अविनाश जी, हमसे जुड़ने के लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
Okay, we have already communicated to you about the Asian stocks, and now just to give you the details on the US stocks, the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 9 points to end at 34,292. The S&P 500 edged up just 1 point to 4,292, and the Nasdaq Composite added 28 points to 14,528, hitting an all-time high for the 6th consecutive session. So the Dow Jones Industrial Average gained 9 points to end at 34,292. The S&P 500 edged up just 1 point to 4,292, and the Nasdaq Composite added 28 points to 14,528, hitting an all-time high for the 6th consecutive session. Joining us now is our expert Jayant Das. Jayant, we welcome you to Market Mantra.
Thanks, Rajesh.
Jayant, how do you view the way the S&P 500 has hit a record high for the 4th straight session? And the Consumer Confidence Report talks about positive tone on the key jobs data. Does it also reflect high consumerism in the U.S. markets?
Well, surely, and this is also a continuation of the fair level of optimism which even the Fed chief holds for the U.S. economy at this point of time. What I do believe is there is a culpable chance of the markets overheating from here, because while after this break of COVID and after what the whole world growth went through, the bounce back I believe has been too fast and too quick in the U.S. market. Having said that, I also believe that given the U.S. market and the U.S. economy is a bellwether for the whole globe, obviously the whole world economy in that sense should look up to and feel a bit exuberated. But there is also a fear of the economy heating up too much at this point of time. The conditions a lot of observers say was similar to the late 2007 period in U.S. when the 2008 subprime hit the U.S. markets very badly, and then we know what happened thereon. So I guess we don't fall into such sort of a trap at this point of time. But having said so, I don't want to sound a pessimistic out over here, especially. But I do feel some of the sectors have, have heated up too fast and too quick.
But this also points towards stronger expectations for strong economic growth, Jayant.
Yeah, Rajesh, if you take a keyword from specific industries out over there, and typically, when such growth happens, there are some specific sectors who just zoom past way beyond this growth level. And these are the sectors which finally bring everyone crashing down. I think a similar pattern has been established, for example, in the real estate market, for example, in the US. I was told in places like California and all, I mean, almost every second day, people are getting, knocks from realtors who want to buy their houses and turn it down and, sell it for higher rates and things like that. And so much so that, there have been walking realtors who are now coming in and visiting houses and mansions to be sold, and whether they would like, an immediate sell-off and things like that. Now, these are, at the end of the day, it sounds good where people, everything is increasing at a sky-high rate and everything you try to sell or want to sell are in good demand. But then, as I said, there is always a fair degree of fear underlying in some of the sectors, because exuberance is fine. Irrational exuberance is good for stock markets to some extent. But, irrational exuberance at a flyaway rate certainly doesn't augur well for sectors which are important drive demand sectors in the U.S. economy.
Okay.
But as I said then, on the whole, I do believe this shows a very good signal for the overall global growth to continue from here.
Okay, quickly want to draw your attention to the Asian markets where the factory output in Japan slumped 5.9%, and China's factory activity expanded at a slower pace as high raw material costs and port disruptions led to affected business activity. How do you view this, Jayanto, the factory output, particularly in Japan, slumping?
Well, obviously, if you say as a one-off view in terms of a statistical figure, it's something, which should be noted and which should be, one should be cautious of. But it's not an established trend. And when there is no established trend happening, and as I said, while there would be such hiccups, because let's not forget the fact that the world is coming back from a situation of slowdown or actually stop down of businesses. Now, when this recovery process happens, or as we now call it, an unlock process, there would be some sort of hiccups. And the same thing has been witnessed in the European markets too. For example, in Germany, we saw specific months where the growth has been really high in the manufacturing sector, and we saw some really bad months all of a sudden coming in, specifically with some sectors of, some cities of Germany once again going in for a lockdown and things like that. So it will not be a smooth sail certainly. But coming back to figures of China and Japan, I don't think one should utterly lose sleep at this point of time, because unless a specific trend is established, while these figures might be leading to a bit more cautionism on how the fast recovery and things like that are happening, but then if the European and the US markets are growing fast, I think these Asian economies, specifically the giant ones led by Japan and China, would also fall through in terms of a similar growth pattern.
जी, और अब रुक करते हैं अगली खबर का। प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी ने आज कहा कि वस्तु और सेवा कर जीएसटी भारत के आर्थिक परिदृश्य में एक मील का पत्थर रहा है। श्री मोदी ने कहा कि इससे आम आदमी पर करों की संख्या, अनुपालन बोझ और समग्र कर भार में कमी आई है, जबकि पारदर्शिता, अनुपालन और कर संग्रह में उल्लेखनीय वृद्धि हुई है। वस्तु और सेवा कर जीएसटी कानून को लागू हुए आज 4 साल पूरे हो रहे हैं। देश के सबसे बड़े कर सुधार जीएसटी कर प्रणाली को 1 जुलाई 2017 को शुरू किया गया था।
The Finance Ministry said that GST has improved the competitiveness of domestic industries in international market by removing hidden and embedded taxes. It said GST helped in achieving better tax compliance by subsuming multiple taxation and reducing taxation burden in the last 4 years. Finance Ministry has said GST rates have been slashed on several items and services. It said GST rates have been reduced on 400 goods and 80 services, and this reduction marks a significant relief for the taxpayer. It added that the combined center and states rates were more than 31% in most of the items in the pre-GST taxation system. Substantial concessions have been extended to the agriculture sector under GST. Most of the agriculture-related machinery and equipment comes under nil, 5% and 12% rates. Finance Ministry has said cattle feed, aquatic feed and poultry feed have been kept under nil rate category in GST. What's your view, Jayanto? This is actually a step towards ease of doing business.
Well, certainly, and as I said, GST, despite, or in spite rather, of its initial hiccups, has more or less established, in a huge manner how to bring in the whole system of, a federal structure into a tax mode in terms of not only efficient taxing system but also an efficient sharing system. And I think the meetings of GST councils goes a long way to prove how a collective decision should normally be taken in the overall country's tax structure. And I completely agree with the Honorable Honorable Prime Minister when he speaks of how GST in that extent has helped the nation to go in and take 2 steps forward in terms of the objectives of the nation at this point of time.
जी जयंता, देखा जाए तो अगर जीएसटी की जब शुरुआत हुई थी तो उच्च कर दरें थीं, लेकिन बाद में धीरे धीरे कर की दरें कम की गई हैं। और अब एक जो सबसे बड़ी बात जो कही जाती है बार बार कि पेट्रोलियम पदार्थों को क्या जीएसटी के दायरे में लाया जाएगा, या लाया भी जाएगा तो उसमें कितना वक्त लग सकता है?
देखिए, ये एक बहुत बड़ी सवाल सबका मन में है और ये कहा जा रहा है कि शायद इसमें अगर जीएसटी स्ट्रक्चर में लेके आ जाए तो इस वक्त जो कीमतों का जो अलग से सिलसिला चल रहा है दौर, शायद उससे थोड़ा राहत मिले। लेकिन हमें ये भी समझना है कि पेट्रोल का जो एक्साइज ड्यूटी और खास करके स्टेट का जो कमाई है वो काफी हद तक ज्यादा है और इनफैक्ट काफी स्टेट ये चाहते हैं कि भाई इसमें जीएसटी के दायरे में ना आए और ये कलेक्टिव डिसीजन है जैसे मैंने कहा। और काफी सालों से मतलब एटलीस्ट पिछले 1-2 साल से इस बारे में चर्चा भी काफी हो रहा है कि शायद पेट्रोल और डीजल को भी जीएसटी का दायरे में लेकर आ जाए। तो देखना पड़ेगा वक्त, क्योंकि जीएसटी काउंसिल का कॉल है और आखिर में जीएसटी काउंसिल जैसे मैंने कहा सारे स्टेट मिलके बनते हैं। तो स्टेट का निर्णय बहुत ज्यादा महत्वपूर्ण यहाँ पे रोल प्ले करते हैं।
Moving on, the overall microfinance industry's gross loan portfolio surged by 11.9% to 2.59 lakh crore rupees at the end of March 2021 against the same period last year, says a report. The growth was driven by an addition of 4 lakh borrowers during the pandemic-struck 12-month period ending March 2021, according to a report Micrometer released by Microfinance Institutions Network. As on March 31, 2021, the microfinance industry served 5.93 crore unique borrowers through 10.83 crore loan accounts, the report said. Your brief reaction on this, Jento?
Well, obviously, in India specifically, if I say, microfinance would play a very critical role, and the huge wave of fintech companies, opening up over the last 2-3 years and really performing well is an important indicator of how it will be shaping the new age lending of India.
Global crude oil prices were broadly steady today after some data suggested U.S. crude stockpiles were shrinking, while an OPEC report warned of a possibly significant glut building by the end of next year. So Brent crude gained 6 cents to trade at $74.82 a barrel. U.S. crude rose 30 cents to $73.28 a barrel. Briefly, the government has said that the current prices are quite challenging and the rates need to be sober, quote unquote.
Yeah, surely so. And but then if the world economy heats up, it's important to understand that oil prices will also follow a similar path. But having said so, I do believe in terms of production and cartels working against and for it. So it will remain dicey, but we just pray that oil prices doesn't go beyond this $80 level, because that would bring in a serious impact to this overall recovery which most of the nations are having at this point of time.
और बात येलो मेटल की, कमजोर वैश्विक संकेतों से दिल्ली सराफा बाजार में आज सोना 264 रुपए सस्ता हुआ और प्रति 10 ग्राम सोने का मूल्य 45,783 रुपए रहा। चांदी भी 60 रुपए टूट कर 67,472 रुपए प्रति किलो पर आ गई। जयंत दास, आप कार्यक्रम में शामिल हुए और आपने इन विषयों पर चर्चा की, इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Jayanta, for being with us. And before we close, the headlines once again. At the stock markets, erasing all its gains, Sensex slips 67 points, Nifty falls 27 points, Rupee weakens 9 paise against the dollar. GST has been a milestone in the economic landscape of India, says Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And gross loan portfolio of microfinance institutions surges 11.9% at the end of March 2021. That's all we have in this edition of Market Mantra. Till tomorrow, goodbye.
Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.